Here we go.
This is Skip, one-on-one, brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. If you care anything about golf, about Tiger, about Rory, about the Masters, you will be fascinated by what you're about to hear. Anyone who knows me knows I am obsessed with golf, with playing golf, analyzing golf, because it is the world's hardest game and greatest pressure test. And there is no one I'd rather listen to talk about golf than Brandel Chamblee. He is the dominant voice in golf. He is the face of the Golf Channel. Brandel speaks with the eloquence and insight of Bobby Jones combined with Grantland Rice. But what I love the most about Brandel is he will speak his considerable mind. He will take controversial stands. Brandel played this game at the highest of levels. He was a first-team All-American at Texas. He did win on the PGA Tour. And once upon a time, back in 1999, he did lead the Masters after a round. And Brandel joins us now from Augusta. It is a pleasure, sir, to have you on this show.
My goodness. Thank you, Skip. That was a generous introduction. I grew up in Irving, Texas in the 70s. And I tell you what, I heard your name and heard about your columns my whole life. My dad was such an avid reader of you. So
thank you.
It's a real pleasure to talk to you, Skip.
Okay. Speaking of Irving, I know you were born in St. Louis. How quickly did you move to Texas?
I would have been 6 or 7. We had a brief stop in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Oh, did you?
But got to Texas just in time to watch the Cowboys really tear it up in the 70s, and that was a lot of fun.
Were you a big Cowboy fan, or were you grudging?
Oh no, I wanted to play professional football, Skip.
Did you?
I ran track, I played football, but somewhere around 12 or 13, everybody got really big. And me being fast wasn't really good enough. I didn't weigh 210 or 220. I wasn't 6 foot tall. And I said, I got to find another sport.
Yeah. So how good were you early in football? Like Pop Warner-ish?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say I was a great football player. I was very fast. I won our district in the 100 meters. I won the hurdles. I won the broad jump. But I wasn't a varsity candidate for football. I just wasn't big enough. But I remember the last play I ever had in football. I was sitting there. The ball was coming to me, and all these defensive guys, they all had stickers for each individual tackle they'd ever made, and their helmets were covered in stickers. And I just remember getting tackled on the ball lengthwise with all these guys on me. I was like, if I ever make it up from this, I'm out. I'm going to go find something else to do. And that was golf and riding horses. I grew up riding horses as well. Yeah. So it was a great way to grow up.
Did you go, I can't remember, to Irving High School or?
I went to MacArthur.
No, MacArthur. Brian Bosworth went there, as I recall.
That's exactly right. He was
right?
The Boz was a couple years younger than me, if I recall. And he was not a particularly big freshman or sophomore, but he got really big junior and senior year. And of course, went on to do some crazy things in college.
Well, he got really big in college. Yeah.
Yes, he did.
Exactly. In fact, I once wrote a column about him for the Dallas Morning News and sat with him at the University of Oklahoma. And he said that he played mostly soccer in high school and was 150 pounders, sort of like you were.
That's exactly right. If I was going to say about 150 pounds, he was nothing formidable physically, but then he certainly turned into something formidable physically. He was.
So was golf love at first sight for you? Do you remember your first swing with the golf club?
I do indeed, Skip. As I said, I rode a lot of horses competitively. My brother and I did a lot of crazy things on them. I took a good friend of mine out to ride horses one day. Unbeknownst to me, he was one of the top ranked juniors in the country. So he invites me out to play golf, and I was hooked. I came back home. I told my dad, I said, Dad, I think I want to take up golf. I want to dive into this. And he was like, okay, but we got to sell the horses because you can't do both. So we did. We sold the horses, and it was about 6 months. I was like, this is what I want to do for a living. And I was almost 13 when I took it up.
How far were the horses stabled from where you lived, or did you live near the horses?
They weren't far. There was a place called Pappy's Ranch, and
Huh.
and it was sort of. We lived in Irving, not far from Las Colinas Country Club, and it would have
Yeah.
been somewhere over near Carpenter. It was like 200
I know
acres.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
mom and dad would drop us off in the morning, come pick us up at night.
And where did you play your first round of golf? Do you recall?
I do indeed. LB Houston
Yeah.
Golf Club. Texas, Dallas has those four municipals. What was it? Tennyson, Stevens,
I know them well. I know them
Sherrill
all.
Park. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And it was a great way. Oh, Cedar Crest.
Cedar
Um,
Crest.
but yeah, LB Houston. My parents would drop me off at 5 or 6 in the morning. Come get me at 8 o'clock at night.
And were you naturally good from the start with hand-eye? Did it just work for you?
I was a good athlete, but I was very diligent. I was very dedicated.
Hmm.
I practiced, all day, every single day. Hit balls in the front yard, in the backyard. My dad, mom, they were so sweet. I ripped the carpet up 2 or 3 times,
Yeah.
taking practice swings in the house and broke windows on the street. And once I broke a stained glass window at the church down the street from me hitting balls, and they were livid. But my dad came over and he paid for the window, and he's like, son, maybe aim a little right, but keep at it.
I'm a little right.
I had the best parents.
Was he a player, golfer?
No, no, not at
No.
all. Nobody in my family knows the first thing about golf.
Really?
I have five brothers and sisters, so my dad was very busy. He paid for dental school, law school, me traveling around the world, all kinds of cars. And he worked his butt off. And my
Hmm.
mom was a great, great mother.
Hmm.
So everybody played football and were in all these different activities. My older brother was in debate and football and all of, but nobody played golf.
Hmm.
So they didn't know the first thing about it.
Hmm. And what did you initially love about it? Like what connected you because you're a deep thinker? What did you fall in love with?
That I could pass or fail on my own merit. I
Yeah.
didn't need somebody to hit a tennis
Mm.
ball with. I didn't need teammates to play football with. As I said, I ran track and jump, but there was no way I was going any further. Kids were 6'2". They were jumping way farther than me. They were faster than me. But golf, I could dig in. And when I watched TV, I'd turn the tube on. They were 5'8",
They were.
golfers back then. They were five
Hmm.
foot nine. Jack was 5'11". He was considered big, but
Yep.
Ben Crenshaw was five. Ben Hogan was five
Hmm.
foot eight.
Yep.
And I thought, well, it looked like every golfer was, about the height that I probably are
Mm.
going to be, and the solitude of it, and just working things out. It was cool to be able to work the ball. It was cool to just be alone with my thoughts
Mm.
and try to create. And then I would watch it on TV, and then I would go out and try to imitate the swings. And there was just something intriguing about it. It was the solitude. It was the beauty of the golf course, and I got good really quick.
Mm. So, in high school, did you become dominant junior, senior years? I assume.
Wouldn't say I was dominant. I got most improved player. Then the next year, most improved player. So I
Yep.
went from barely making the team to shooting in the mid 60s in a year and a half, 2 years,
Whoa.
and qualifying for the team, I shot 65, 69, 70, 70, 274. I remember that.
Hmm.
And then I was getting recruited by, unfortunately, SMU lost its golf program with the Eric Dickerson scandal, which
Yep.
I'm sure and wrote all
I
about.
was right in the middle of it. Yep.
Right in the middle of that. So I really wanted to go to SMU, but I was being recruited by every school pretty much in the Southwest Conference and a few others, OU and et cetera. But I really just wanted to go to UT. But UT recruited the number one junior player in the country. His name was Tommy Moore. And
Hmm.
when Tommy Moore decided not to go to the University of Texas and decided to go to Oklahoma State,
Hmm.
the coach came out and recruited me. And probably the most important day in my sort of adolescent life was he came out to watch me at the Texas State Junior. And, everybody wants to go to UT. It was Crenshaw, it was Kite, it was Earl Campbell. It was just everything you'd ever want to do, go to UT. Coach drives out and he stands right behind me, par three, 3-iron, windy, hard pan water. I hit it right in the water. I hit it in the water. I hit it in the water. I make 9. And I think that's it. I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
not a Longhorn. I'm going to go to OU or Texas Tech or Texas
Yep.
A&M. Coach stuck around there for a few more holes. He calls me like 2 weeks later, says, "Would you come in for a recruiting trip?" I said, "Gosh, yeah, absolutely." So I go in. I go into his office. I said, "Coach, I didn't think I'd ever hear from you again after I
Yeah.
made that 9." He said, "Yeah, you did make a 9." He goes, "But you birdied the next 2 holes, and that's
Yep.
all I needed to
There you
see."
go. Yep.
And that therein started my life as a Longhorn. And I stuck around, got my degree, and I'm very proud to say I went to the University of Texas. I enjoyed that place.
Good for you. I hate the University of Texas because I'm from Oklahoma, but that's okay.
I understand. I know
I,
you grew up in Oklahoma
I
City.
give you that. By the way, quick thought on SMU and the golf program. When you did break through and went on the PGA Tour, you won at Vancouver and you held off the late great Payne Stewart.
Yeah.
Where was he with the SMU program? Because he ended up going there, and I don't remember how far
Yeah, he would have
behind.
got out. Yeah, he would have got out in '79. And if I'm correct, they had sort of the death penalty in '80.
Yes, they did.
And so I graduated from high school in '80. So I would have entered in the fall of '80, and it was gone. So there was no golf team. I would have stuck around, played at SMU happily, loved SMU, wanted to go there. So I missed out there, but benefited from going to the University of Texas. And Payne, he lived in a different stratosphere in the golf world than I did. He was a superstar. Maybe not. He was a huge star, a superstar. Greg Norman,
Yeah.
Tiger Woods. But I mean, Payne was right there. But he was a very entertaining, a fun-loving guy, and I knew him a little bit. But going head to head with him for a victory certainly made that victory a lot sweeter. And he was gracious in defeat and a lot of fun to be around.
I got to know him pretty well, and I really loved him. And he was great to sit and talk golf with, as are you. And my favorite Payne story was that his first trip to Augusta, where you are now, and on his first trip up Magnolia Lane to the golf course, he rented a limousine and sat in the very back of it and watched Caddyshack as they rolled up Magnolia Drive. And
Of course he did.
Of course he did, because it had to be a little irreverent, because I don't know if you love Caddyshack the way I do, but
Of course.
it's just great. And that was vintage Payne, and we obviously miss him.
He was larger than life. The day before he passed away, I sat in the locker room at Disney with him and John Cook, and we
Really.
were all debating whether or not we would even play the Champions Tour.
Mm.
And we were yucking it up. Payne that week had made some slightly off-color comments about the Ryder Cup, and he used to wear these funky teeth. He'd put in these funky teeth and make these comments. So he did it, and so he was catching a lot of grief in the media that week. If there had been social media, it had blown
No.
up, and they would accused him of every bad thing you could imagine. But
Everything. Yeah.
he was just having fun, a little fun. So we sat in the locker room that day, and we yucked it up for about an hour, hour and a half, just talked and laughed a little bit. I got on a plane the next morning, flew home, landed. Answer machine was just full. It was just just the worst, one of the worst tragedies in the history of the game.
Yeah. For those who might not remember, they had, I guess, a leak in the plane, and they
Yeah,
all
yeah,
died in flight. And it looked
right.
like
That's
for a
right.
while, as the plane was tracked over middle America, that they're going to have to shoot it down in case it was
Yeah,
headed for a metropolitan area. But it crashed, I can't remember, in North Dakota or somewhere out in the
that's right.
rural areas. So
That's right. Golf really misses him.
misses him. So I've always wondered this about you, because you were a very good player, obviously not a superstar, but you have such a great mind for golf, and you think so deeply and feel so deeply for golf, that to me, that was a handicap for you, because the deep thinkers often have the most trouble consistently playing golf, because it'll just eat you alive psychologically if you let it. Did it start to eat you alive as your career progressed, because you have too big of a mind for it?
Well, that's I appreciate that. Yeah, I was absolutely far too guilty of curiosity.
Yes.
When I was younger, I remember my dad didn't know anything about golf, but the golf professional at LB Houston said, don't ever let anybody mess with his golf swing. It's natural. It's fluid. I didn't have any lessons. But once I got to a level where I was one of the best players in the country as an amateur and as a collegian, I would look up, Skip, and there'd just be loads of people behind me, teachers wanting to watch me hit golf balls. And, I would talk to them, what do you see? What do you do? What do you, and next thing you know, I'm looking at video. Next thing you know, I'm reading every book. Next thing you know, and these people are, they're all on the cover of magazines. So, ostensibly they know everything there is to know about the golf swing. So I'm listening to them, trying it out. And I was a good athlete. I could, they tell me to do something. I could do it. I was a good student. I was a good athlete, and I worked hard. And I could incorporate their ideas, but I was never as long. I never hit the ball as high the minute I started listening to all of them. And look, I'm not criticizing them. They certainly didn't have malevolence in their heart. They were trying to help me. But what I didn't know then that I certainly know now is that they're guessing. They're guessing. And we have this lovely tool now called YouTube, where we can go back and look at the greats, and we can empirically divine out what they did and make up our own minds and put our swings up there beside. So everybody can be an expert now. And back then it was hard to be an expert, because even in the simplest of books, like Five Fundamentals written by Ben Hogan, well, it was written by Herbert Warren Wynn, but they were his words and Anthony Ravelli's illustrations. Well, Anthony, they were beautiful pictures, but they were wrong. And what Hogan said he did, he didn't do. So if you followed that book and read that book as I did, and you tried to do it, well, you'd get off kilter. And that was a book that is heralded as the Bible of the game of golf. And I just knew that everybody that read it had weak grips and hit snap hooks.
Exactly.
And I couldn't make any sense out of it. And so on it went. So instruction has gotten way better now, but I have innumerable tools available to me now to dive in and I think get closer to the truth of cause and effect.
Okay. Before we get to this year's Masters, speaking of what you just spoke of, I'm going to read you two recent quotes that I just read about the golf swing and get your reaction to these quotes. And the first is from the aforementioned Mr. Hogan, as in Ben. For those who don't know, he was the greatest ball striker ever, won 9 majors, won 2 Masters. And this is what he said about the golf swing. Reverse every natural instinct you have and just do the opposite of what you're inclined to do, and you will probably come very close to having a perfect golf swing. Okay, that's the first quote. Second quote is from Fred Couples, who did win the 1992 Masters with a little help from the golf gods, number 12. He's going to play in his 40th Masters this week at Augusta. And Fred Couples said of the golf swing, as far as swing and techniques are concerned, I don't know diddly squat. When I'm playing well, I don't even take aim. That's what Fred, I don't even take aim. He just sort of closes his eyes and hits it with one of the most beautiful, natural, elastic swings I've ever seen. So your thoughts about Mr. Hogan and Mr. Couples' comments?
Well, there you have both ends of the spectrum, and I love Freddie Couples. There you have the most introspective of people, and by all accounts, Ben Hogan was a genius. Gardner Dickinson, who was a good friend of his, I believe he got an engineering degree in college, but he always wanted Hogan to take an IQ test, and Hogan would refuse. And Gardner, being the clever and cunning fella he was, would sneak in IQ tests questions periodically as they were having dinner, just, to make it sound conversational. And he said he went back, and sure enough, Ben's IQ was off the charts. So he was the most introspective of players. And then when you look at Freddie Couples, he's the most instinctual of players. Now, Freddie's smart too, cagey smart,
Cagey smart.
He's smart enough to know he should never mess with that golf swing. And then there's a brilliance in that. And he's smart enough to know that he's gifted with flexibility and strength and speed. And there is genius in simplicity. I read a quote once from Freddie when he was asked about his speed. He goes, "Oh, I don't know." He said, I just, I try to figure out, look, on the backswing, my club's here, and I try to get it to this shoulder as fast as I can. Okay. So I don't know if it was Freddie said it, but it's been said before. There's 2 ways to play this game. Either be the smartest person in the room or the dumbest person in the room. It's the guy in the middle that has a bit of problem, and it's important that you know it. But the great thing about Hogan was that he was, he just had that unalloyed will to figure things out. In an era when nobody practiced, he
Hmm.
practiced all day long, and it's
Hmm.
it's just a great story. His success.
Hmm. Would you believe that after Ben retired from golf, he would go to Shady Oaks every day? And I once wrote a column for the Dallas Morning News about sort of the ghost of Mr. Hogan because there was an empty fairway there. Every day they said he would go out with a 5-iron bag of balls and hit them all like 5 yards within each other, walk to the other end with the club dog named Max and hit them back the other way and go back and forth. So I wrote a whole column about what's become of Mr. Hogan. And he actually wrote me a very nice and funny letter about the column, and it really touched me. And it's the greatest piece of memorabilia I have. So that
Well, I
was,
hope you've got that frame somewhere.
I do. I do. And by the way, speaking of the Masters, you mentioned his co-author, his sort of ghostwriter, Herbert Warren Wynn, I guess the greatest golf writer ever. So to get into this year's Masters, I'll tell you the quick story. I was on a flight to Augusta one year, and as fate would have it, Mr. Wynn sat next to me. He's the man who, for those who don't know, nicknamed Amen Corner. Amen Corner. And we're talking about the golf tournament. And he said, the first day you're there, the one question you need to answer the day before the Masters is it firm? And I was like, is it firm? It seemed a little esoteric to me, but anyway, I'll ask you before we get to this year's tournament, is it firm?
Well, it's not going to be firm at the end of today. It's supposed to
Okay.
rain upwards
All
of
right.
2 inches. Now,
Okay.
I didn't hear it last night when I was sleeping. Didn't wake me up. They were tornado warnings and everything when we were in bed. Wake up this morning and it doesn't look like there's a deluge, but it's supposed to rain all day.
Okay.
And then the rest of the week, because the golf course was quite firm last week for the Augusta National Women's
Mm.
Amateur. So for the rest of the week, it's supposed to be sunny, cool, a little bit windy. It's supposed to be ideal conditions to get it back to firm. And Augusta National, because they have this sub-air system under now the fairways and the greens,
Mm.
they have a way of controlling to some extent the firmness of the golf course. So to answer that question, yes, I suspect come Thursday it will be
It'll be
quite firm,
firm.
Skip.
Okay.
Yeah.
FanDuel is giving all new customers a shot at $250 in bonus bets. Join FanDuel today. You'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Just visit fanduel.com/skip to get in on all the NBA play-in tournament action. That's fanduel.com/skip for your shot at $250 in bonus bets.
Yeah.
All right, let's for a moment talk about the one man who's not going to be there, Tiger Woods. 49 years of age now. Body obviously continues to break down, unfortunately. He's won one major in the last 17 years, that, of course, the 2019 Masters. How amazed are you, Brandel, that he's still the biggest name and biggest draw in golf at this stage in age?
I guess not very, because what he did, I mean, nobody had ever seen anything like it. And look, I know I've read you, I've watched you. You hate cliches, you hate hyperbole, and in this job, I hate cliches and I hate hyperbole. I try to be as accurate and as fair as I can be and find the truth of it. So I rage against hyperbole. So when I say nobody had ever seen anything like it, of course, Bobby Jones won those what they were majors then, and
They
the
were.
U.S. and the British Amateur,
Yep.
and nobody had ever seen anything like him. Okay. And then Hogan came along and nobody had ever seen anything like him. And then Nicklaus came along and nobody had ever seen anything like him. But when I say nobody had ever seen anything like Tiger, nobody had ever won 4 professional majors in a year. And then on top of that, the Players Championship, and nobody had ever won them by as wide of margins.
Correct.
15 shots,
Yeah.
12 shots. He
Rough.
won regular tournaments by 11 and 9 and 8. So he was so far superior to any of his peers, far, far more superior to his peers than Jones was, than Hogan was, than Nicklaus was. You can't find, I'm not, I'm not an expert on other sports as you are. But I can tell you in the golf world, nobody had ever seen anything like him. And
No.
it wasn't just how good he was, Skip. It was how animated he was. Okay. He was kind of Muhammad Ali, Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky, Arnold Palmer, all rolled into one
Yep.
athlete.
Yep.
And he would elevate hype and then exceed the hype. And that's a very difficult thing to do. And he didn't seem to be sated at all by victories. He didn't seem to be sated by the fact that he'd won 4 majors, because then he'd go try to change his golf swing. So to get to your question, no, I'm not at all surprised, because he gave us so many comebacks. He came back on the broken leg in 2008, won the U.S. Open. Then he came back after the scandal in 2012 and 13 and ascended to number one again. Then he came back from the chippy nips and a bad back to win the Masters again.
He did.
So each time, each comeback is more epic and more improbable than the previous one. So he's teased us into thinking the impossible could happen again. So no, I'm not surprised.
And can the impossible happen again, in your opinion?
I just don't see a way to do it. For all his ability to do things that nobody else can conceive of, he can't do the simplest of things, which is walk around a golf course for 72 holes. He ends up hobbled. He ends up walking, and invariably you end up in an awkward stance. Invariably the wind blows and it gets cold. And he's got this sclerotic body now, where if it's not perfect, 85 degrees and humid, it doesn't
Yep.
feel good. He doesn't look good. He can still swing a golf club beautifully. He can
can.
still hit some amazing shots. But, when the ball's way below your feet or way above your feet or 1 foot's in a bunker, you look at it and you think, well, he's going to wrench something here. And inevitably he does.
So, Brandel, it just tears me up to think about how some of his injuries were self-inflicted after he dominated this game, to your point, the way nobody has for those, whatever it was, 3 or 4 years in a row, all the way up through that, 08 U.S. Open, Rocco Mediate in the playoff. Then Hank Haney's book explains the big miss that Tiger first hurt his knee, actually ruptured his Achilles, wanting to be a Navy SEAL, to follow in his father's footsteps in the military. And he was out on drills with them, going through sort of live fake drills with them with fake ammo, but doing everything Navy SEALs did, and ended up rupturing his ACL. So do you look back and say what could have been? Do you look at that?
Absolutely. Skip, I will say, for everything we've just said about Tiger Woods, I would say he's the most underachieving golfer in the history of the game.
Yep.
And the way I get there is I can think of no other golfer who left 10 to 15 major championships on the table.
He did.
Who left 30 to 40 regular tour events on the table. Of course, he's the greatest player of all time, but he's also at the same time the most underachieving. When you look at the time he spent in the prime of his career, not injured, but dismantling and then rebuilding a golf swing, only to arrive back at the exact same place where he started, at the expense of 2 years of time and that win percentage. So he did it in late 97, all through 98 and half of 99. He did it again at the end of 02, 03, and 04. He did it again in 2010, 11. So at the expense of time. And then when you factor in the injuries, when he won the U.S. Open in 2008, we were there. Live From was there. We were on the set. All of us up there. At the time, it was Nobilo. And we're up on the set. And we had numerous guests come up. All asked the question, where's Tiger going from here? Nobody guessed beneath 20 majors at the end of his career. It was 20, 25 majors. Of course you would.
Of course.
And over 100 tour events. So, look, I mean, it's still a debate. A lot of people still think Jack Nicklaus is the greatest player of all time. I say it this way: Jack had the best career in terms of major championships. Tiger played the better golf,
Yeah.
and which would you rather have? But Jack's record is ungodly: 18 majors, 19 second place finishes. But Tiger had a higher win percentage, won by wider margins. The fact that he didn't get done what we all thought he was going to get done, I think that's part of genius.
Hmm.
You know, genius is just mercurial
It
and
is.
impossible to figure out. And Tiger was nothing if not a genius.
Hmm. So I assume it's going to stand forever that Jack will have 18 and Tiger 15 majors, because I'm with you. I just can't see one more comeback. So if you want to just go off the majors, then Jack's the so-called GOAT, right? But if you want to talk about what your eyes told you while you're watching Tiger Woods, he was the better player.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the way I would. That's the way I would sum it up. And look, there's a wonderful book. If you're a real big golf geek, there is a book, and I mean it's an obscure book. You know, it's almost like Bill James wrote the book about,
Yeah.
Moneyball that
Baseball.
spurred
Mm-hmm.
Moneyball. Well, there's a
Mm-hmm.
fellow much in the Bill James vein by the name of Bill
Hmm.
Felber, who wrote The Whole Truth, HOLE, The Whole Truth.
Hmm.
And believe it or not, he uses sabermetrics in a bell curve to go back and look at every single professional golfer in the history of the game to 1860 to present. Well, this book came out about 8 years ago.
Hmm.
And so if you want to argue from from a data standpoint, you've got a lot of meat on the bone in that book
Hmm.
to demonstrate how much better Tiger was than every other golfer who's
Really?
ever played it. It's a
Hmm.
great book. The Whole Truth. I recommend
Okay. All right. I'm going to get it today.
it. You will love it.
So obviously we're back to the oldest cliche: you drive for show and putt for dough. As great a putter and clutch putter as Jack was, I think Tiger was one more level above Jack in clutch putting, because even against Bob May at Valhalla, I mean, he's just dropping putt after clutch putt from 15, 20 feet like they're tap ins. I don't know. I'd never seen anything like Tiger with the putter. I know everybody wants to talk about Tiger hitting it off the planet, but Tiger as a putter.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Tiger only began to hit it off the planet when he started working with Hank Haney. If you look at that period from 99, 2000, 2001, 2002, that swing, he was hitting over 70% of the fairways and he was 10 yards longer than the next longest guy on tour. Now, look, John Daly was the longest on tour. Tiger was second by a yard, but John Daly hit driver everywhere indiscriminately. Tiger
Hmm.
hit a lot of fairways and hit driver. He was the best driver on tour.
Hmm.
So, so Tiger had every aspect of the game. He was the longest and straightest, by far the best iron player, the best chipper, and the best putter. So you add all that up, and it wasn't a fair fight. So it's difficult to say who was the better putter, because you go back in history and you watch Jack, and yes, there's a few putts I see that he missed, but an uncanny ability to make the biggest putts at the biggest moment.
He did.
We
Yeah.
have data for Tiger that demonstrates that he is the best putter of his era. And I'm throwing that in because, look, he would have been, if we wanted to parse it, maybe he was second if we look at the period over the time. Maybe he was second, maybe he was third. But Tiger had the latest tee times. So the greens are the most chewed up.
Good point.
And he had the putts that mattered the most, week after week after week after week. And when he needed them, that putt that you referred to at the last hole against Bob May, to tie Bob, he had a 6, 7, 8 footer down the hill. And he was asked, and I think this gives you some insight into Tiger's brain and the way it worked. He was asked what he was thinking, and maybe you've read this, but is asked what he was thinking as he stood over that putt. And he said, I was thinking that my mom could make this putt. I mean, talk about a way to boil to get it as reductively simple as you possibly can. And then the putt he made at the U.S. Open on the last hole to tie Rocco in 2008. Well, that was across Poana. At the end of the day, at the end of the week, chewed up, pumpy. I mean, that ball looked like
It's
it
unbelievable.
plinkoed down there, and it went in. So
It went in.
you just can't make him up. I've tried, Skip, for 20 years to sum him up, and it's a very difficult task.
All right. Bring home the world's best steak experience with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during their spring savings event. And for an extra $30 off, use promo code SKIP at checkout. That's promo code SKIP at checkout. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code SKIP at checkout. See site for details. Now to the man, maybe of the hour, the man with the second best odds to win this week at Augusta. A Rory McIlroy going, obviously, once again for the career Grand Slam, trying to rid himself, exercise his demons at Augusta. So if I give you a scale of 1 to 10, what's your confidence level in Rory this week to win the Masters?
It's high. It's probably higher than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Because I've never had it very high in here. This golf course is his nemesis. But I would put it at an 8.
Okay.
It's his, in my view, it's the best chance he's ever had to complete the career Grand Slam, to win the Masters. Every single player in the top 15, and it's really only the top 15 that have a chance to win here every year. Maybe top 20, we could squeeze it, but it's an elite. It's a golf course with the best show off. They all kind of have a little something, a little bit off their game, or they're players where the golf course doesn't fit them. And Rory comes in here playing the best golf of his life. He switched to a softer ball, which I think is going to help him get on top of it. So I would give him an 8, but he's got to get past Scotty Scheffler, and that's the hardest thing for him to do. And also get over. He's got 2 big hurdles here: a technical hurdle. The golf course doesn't fit him the way the fairways lie and the way he swings. He's got a technical hurdle to get over. And he clearly has a mental hurdle here. Clearly. He plays his best golf when he's 10 back. He plays his worst golf when he's 2 or 3 back or tied for the lead. And there's you can attribute that to nothing but a mental hurdle.
I don't know if all of our viewers remember, but it was 2011. So it was a long time ago, or about 14 years ago. He had the meltdown where he led going into Sunday. What was it by? I'm losing track. 3 or 4. Was it 4 maybe that he led going into Sunday?
He led by, I think it was 4. I think you're right.
4.
I think it was 4. Yeah, going into Sunday. Yeah.
So he makes the turn. I think he's still up 4, and he hits it into Butler Cabin, goes triple on 10, bogey on 11, double on 12, ball game. And it's just hard to get over that. And if you look at his 4 majors that he won, he won them pretty much front running. Obviously 2 of them he won by Tiger-esque sort of runaways.
Yes, he did.
And it just, I'll throw this at you. I know you don't follow the other sports that closely, but to me, Rory is the LeBron James of golf, in that LeBron is wildly talented, gifted, but doesn't have the mental toughness, to me, that Michael Jordan had. So Rory to Tiger, Tiger is all-time mentally tough. He is definitely in Jordan's category for mental, high level of competition, toughness, and competitive fire and will. And I don't know that Rory has that. I mean, he's so gifted, best driver of the golf ball today, obviously, but maybe there's just a little something. He's like LeBron. He's a really nice guy to me, and sometimes nice guys don't finish first. It's hard because there's no real cold-blooded killer going on there in the golf sense. Your thoughts?
Well, when we compare people, everybody's impoverished by the comparison to Tiger.
They are.
Tiger's 54-hole closure rate was about 95 and change, 96%. Okay. By comparison, Jack Nicklaus was a choker to Tiger Woods. Now, that's a preposterous thing to say, but Jack Nicklaus's closing rate was 70 some odd percent. Like, there's no comparison to Tiger. So we all have a Tiger Woods hangover. So that yardstick is a very difficult one. When we look at what Rory is doing, he's won 3 of 4 major championships, 3 of the 4 that you can win to get to the career Grand Slam. He's tied in that regard with 11 other players. There's 12 players that have won 3 of the 4. Those players that had a chance at the major they were missing, there is such a dearth of success amongst those players. In other words, because if you go back and look at those that have achieved the career Grand Slam, beginning with Gene Sarazen in 1935, by the way, he had no idea he won the career Grand Slam, but posthumously we give it to him. Okay, so from 35 to 66, those four men, Gene Sarazen, Ben Hogan, Arnold Palmer, and Jack Nicklaus, they won 35 to 66. So we're talking over a period of 31 years. Four men do it. From then to now, one has done it in 59 years. Just one. So that's a testament to how much more competitive it is, but also how much more attention there is to the process of doing it. When Gene Sarazen would have done it in 35, first of all, he didn't even know what a career Grand Slam was. There was no such term, and the Masters wasn't a major championship then. So, there wouldn't have been the attention to it. And Tiger did it the very first event he had a chance to do it. So the task of doing it is a mental hurdle. There have really only been 3 or 4 good chances for those 12 men to win their fourth major, just a few. And Rory, again, the spotlight's on him and the golf course doesn't fit him. And he tends to swing into out. And the best players at Augusta, the course fits players better that swing sort of across it out to in, because you have so many hook lies there, the ball above your feet. For a right-handed golfer, you have a hook lie a little bit, certainly at 1. At 2, you can. At 3, you do. At 7, you do. At 8, you do. At 9, you do. At 10, you do. At 13, you do. To some extent, at 15, you do. And at 17, you do. Now, you have all the ball above your feet, and you need to hit a high, soft cut into these greens. And if you swing into out, you're coming from sort of low to high, and you run into the hill. And when you run into the hill, it shuts your blade down and sends it at a lower trajectory, right to left. If you can cut across it, you're coming from high to low, and you don't run into the hill. You pick it off the turf, so you can hit high cuts. Okay. That's Scotty Scheffler. That's Jack Nicklaus. That's Jordan Spieth, who had the best 5 Masters starts, the first 5 Masters starts in history. So that's the problem that Rory has, and that the golf course doesn't fit him. He underperforms there to a large extent. He averages over the course of his career there 42 greens in regulation over the week. The winner averages about 52. That's a 10 deficit. That's a big deficit. And it's far below his average on the PGA Tour. So he comes into a place that doesn't fit him. So he has that mental hurdle, that technical hurdle, that psychological hurdle. He's got to get over that. And then the whole world is saying it's inevitable he's going to win the career Grand Slam. That is a lot to have to deal with and meditate on.
Fascinating, enlightening, because I always look at Augusta as off the tee favoring the draw more than the fade off the tee, because you got so many left dog legs, right? But you're saying second shots, the shots into the green, you want to pick them and cut them and fade.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I call it a picker's paradise and a digger's dungeon. If you're getting steep on it, it hasn't been very kind to people with strong grips and shut faces. Yes, there are some exceptions. Dustin Johnson won there, but that was in November. Honestly, that tournament should stand by itself. It was soft, didn't even count. But yeah, so he's got that hurdle. Having said that, the softer ball gets him more on top of it and less underneath it, because he's got to get more on top of it to hit it down, because with the softer ball, it spins and it gets up in the air. So him switching to a softer ball is advantageous. But, your original point, is he mentally tough enough to get it done? I hear you on that. And I could go chapter and verse on mental hurdles at Augusta National. But we are talking about a guy who's won upwards of 45 times globally, 27 times on the PGA Tour. So, yes, I mean, of course he's tough mentally, but Augusta poses so many problems for him, and there's so much attention on him. There's nobody in golf that faces more pressure, and I would argue maybe that nobody faces more pressure to get a win at Augusta National annually. Nobody has faced as much pressure since Bobby Jones was trying to win the amateur at Marion in 1930, when it was a foregone conclusion that he's going to do it, because most people think it's a foregone conclusion that Rory's going to win the Masters. Well, he's 35.
Yep.
He's 35. The
35.
clock is ticking.
Yeah.
So it's an enormous amount of pressure that he faces. And how do you get Zen-like?
Man, it's tough. I do
Right.
not envy him this Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
That's why we watch sport.
That's why we watch. Okay, now to the favorite, the man you referred to, the biggest hurdle for Rory is Scotty, as in Scheffler. Again, I'm going to ask the unfair question just because I'm fascinated to hear your answer. But how close is Scotty to Tiger? How close will he ever be to Tiger?
So tee to green, he is Tiger, believe it or not. Tee to green, he's as good as Tiger when Tiger was at his best, which is mind-boggling to me. I never
It
thought I was
is.
going to see that. The difference between what Tiger was on the greens and what Scotty is on the greens, and so the difference in the aggregate of all aspects of their game is the difference between Usain Bolt and whoever finished second to Usain Bolt. And actually, when you do the percentages, it comes out to exactly the right percentage of how much Usain Bolt was outrunning his competitors. That's how much Tiger Woods would outrun Scotty Scheffler. He's so much better than Scotty Scheffler. It's mind blowing. You know, he's secretariat to, I can't remember the name of the doggone horse that kept finishing second to Secretariat in 73. That's how much better what Tiger was to Scotty Scheffler. But having said that, there's only ever been one golfer in the scoring average. You know, you keep track of the Barton Trophy. There's only ever been one golfer with a lower scoring average than Scotty Scheffler, and that's Tiger Woods. And he did it innumerable times. You know, 8, 9, 10 times. But Rory's never had a lower scoring average than Scotty Scheffler had last year. Nobody, not Dustin, not Jordan, not Brooks Koepka, none of them. So that's because he hits the ball so well.
And the difference is the flat stick, because
That's right.
we talked about Tiger's putting, and Scotty's already had to resort to some sort of version of the claw.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
In fact, I'm sort of surprised he's been as dominant as he is, struggling with the putter as much as he has. But he does have that mental capacity to will home some big putts in big moments.
He does. Look, he's not a bad putter. He's an average putter.
Yeah.
He's an average putter on the PGA Tour. I mean, he doesn't pick up strokes on the field. He doesn't really lose strokes on the field. He misses his share of putts. But Tiger was the best putter. And what we know from data, and you know, I mean, yeah, you do hear the adage, drive for show, putt for dough, but really it's the opposite. So, you know, our Bill James is a fellow by the name of Mark Brody. And what he has figured out with his data is that what you do tee to green is 5 times more important than what you do on the green.
Really?
Now, of course, yes, statistically speaking, it's 5 times more important. So the best players, the ones who win the most, yes, they're the best ball strikers, but they're the best ball strikers who have the best putting week. Okay. So you're not winning golf tournaments unless you're a marvelous ball striker. And you're certainly not going to be one of the great players of all time unless you're a superior ball striker, which is true of Jack, Hogan, Jones, Tiger, all of them.
Okay. So speaking of technique, mechanics, I'm curious what you think when you watch the replays of Scotty's, especially his right foot just spins out. I've never seen anything like it before, and it works, right?
It does. He looks like, you know, one of those ice skaters doing a pirouette, and somehow managed to hit a 320-yard drive as straight as anybody's ever. I'll give you a piece of data that you.
Okay.
So there's a statistic on the PGA Tour that I look at a lot. Not many people refer to it, but I absolutely look at it a lot. It's called distance from the edge of the fairway. Okay. So the people that generally lead distance from the edge of the fairway are predictably the shortest of hitters. They're the guys who swing the club head 104 miles an hour to 109 miles an hour. Scotty Scheffler swings the club right at 120 miles an hour. And last year, he led the PGA Tour in distance from the edge of the fairway, meaning he had the smallest miss on tour, swinging at 120 miles an hour. So he's the farthest thing away from the stereotypical bomber. And at the same time, he looks like, if you just look at his feet, a drunk at a driving range. His feet are going everywhere. They're spinning, they're jumping, they're you know, and it's like there's such incongruent actions, you know, the golf ball and the feet. They don't match up.
They don't match up. And Brandel, I would think, if you ask me, as I try to analyze this, I would think he would lose power. He would have a big power leak because he loses his right foot, but it seems like he's losing it after impact somehow. We're at impact. He's really good and really powerful, right?
Yeah, he's unbelievable. I mean, what we've, our thinking has changed a little bit. When I grew up, it was about footwork. There was so much talk about proper footwork. Of course, nobody had more elegant footwork than Ben Hogan. Now, Bobby Jones did get up on his toes at impact.
Okay.
He did get up on his toes, but Hogan's footwork was immaculate. It was beautiful, and so was Jack Nicklaus's, and then so was Tom Watson's.
Mm-hmm.
And Jerry Pates, my era. And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching all these people's beautiful footwork, but beginning with Tiger Woods. You're like, what's going on here? Why is Tiger Woods flying off the ground? Why is his front foot? It was flying off the ground like this. It was pronating like this. Here's his
Yep.
toe. It's like over here,
Mm-hmm.
off the ground, up. His right foot would come straight up off his heel in transition, and they created something called force plates.
Mm-hmm.
So you put these force plates down, and what you find out is that the way to hit the ball the longest is to jump off the ground to impact. So if you watch the longest drivers, they're all jumping off the ground. It's like they're all lifting weight. They're jumping. They're getting into the ground in
Yep.
transition. They're squatting down, and then boom, they're flying up.
Mm.
So what's amazing is that Scotty Scheffler has all of these techniques to hit it as far as he can in terms of jumping off the ground.
Mm.
And yet he hits it straighter than anybody in the game in terms of his miss. Uh, it's bizarre, but players generally speaking, and this wasn't true with Tiger, but for the most part, genius players that come along that just dominate, they always do a little something different. Jack had the flying right arm.
He did. Yep.
Hogan had a really flat swing with a cupped grip.
Did.
They always do something a little bit different.
They do.
Arnold Palmer, shut face, strong
It's
grip,
crazy.
all
Yeah.
over the place.
Yep.
Tom Watson, long swing, strong grip, shut face. They're
Mm.
always a little different. The prettiest of golf swings, they're fun to look at. The Gene Littlers, the Al Geibergers, the Adam Scotts. But the Bubba Watson was probably the best driver for a long period of time.
Mm.
All over the place, his
All
feet
over the
were.
place.
Yeah, and Bubba, by the way, set the record for the strokes gain off of the tee, and it hasn't been broken since.
Hmm.
And his feet are all over the place.
Hmm.
So the crazy footwork is a phenomenon of this generation.
Okay. So I saw where, as you were making your picks, you mentioned Colin Morikawa, Shane Lowry. What's your gut telling you right now? What if you got to pick somebody and you got to pick somebody? Which way are you going? Do you have a dark horse and a favorite, or what? How are you looking at it?
I do. Look, when it comes to sort of when a dark horse, they're kind of off the radar, but Shane Lowry, Hideki Matsuyama, and Justin Thomas, they're all off the radar. And Justin Thomas has really not played well at Augusta, which is a big head scratcher. But when you combine, he's driving a little better. His iron play is amazing, and around the greens is amazing. That's why Shane Lowry's a dark horse. That's why Hideki's a dark horse. And the three favorites are Rory, Scotty, and Colin Morikawa.
Okay.
I just, until Scotty played in Houston, and what I saw in Houston, I thought, well, that's it. That's enough. Everything came together for him in Houston. And Houston is not a great golf course for Scotty Scheffler, and only the longest of hitter on the PGA, because it's wide open with no trees, et cetera. It's just about how much weight you can lift. And Minwoo Lee, he's got 190 ball speed, won by one over Scotty. So I don't know how they're going to beat Scotty this week, and Scotty has very much the same release
Agreed.
pattern as Nicholas.
Yeah.
How are they going to beat him? This is a perfect course for him. He's hungry. They're going to have their hands full. And I wouldn't have said that. Colin Morikawa was probably my favorite 2 or 3 weeks ago. I dive in the last month before the majors or the Masters. I'm like you on deadline. I'm just getting after it. Colin Morikawa is a fabulous pick. Two, I wouldn't say major weaknesses, but one of them's more major than the other. One, he's not particularly long, so he doesn't as easily get the shortest of irons into the par fives. So his angle of descent isn't as steep, so he can't hit as close. The other is he's limited to shot shape.
Hmm.
You know, he just hits a lot of fades. Like if you go to last year, you can just YouTube this. Go to the last round last year, the Masters 2024. Go to the ninth tee, and there you will see what kept Colin Morikawa. That's a dog leg left
It
with a
is.
reverse camber fairway like
Yep.
this. He hits a fade down there, catches the fairway, and goes over, gets behind a tree, makes double bogey.
Okay.
Scotty
There you
Scheffler,
go.
who primarily plays a
Yep.
fade,
Mm-hmm.
gets up, hits a hard draw, hits a soft wedge to about 2 inches, makes birdie. So
Boom.
that's it. So if Colin can hit draws off a 2T, off of 9T, off a 13T, off a
Mm-hmm.
14T, um, and off a 17T, if he's figured that out,
Ugh,
he could win. But that's a big if, and he's got to get
it
help from
is.
Scotty.
By the way, you mentioned Min Woo Lee. I must say, I watched every swing of that last round at Memorial Park in Houston, and I wasn't sure about his psychological fortitude, but he did hold off Scotty. And he
He
has
did.
this will be his fourth Masters, and he has two top 25s for what that's worth. That kid is supremely talented. You talk about athletic. The way
He
he
really is.
attacks through the swing, I was in awe of it. It
Yeah,
is an impressive move at the golf ball that he has.
it really is. If you put his swing up with Barry Bonds,
Yeah,
face on, he has every home run move that you can
he
just about
does.
have.
Yeah,
It's home because he's slightly built.
yeah.
He's not built like Barry Bonds was,
No,
and he gets 190-mile-an-hour ball speed, and he's a fabulous putter and chipper, and he's just got a lot of flair, and he's fun loving. He's a wonderful kid to pull for. And you're right, what he did there after he drove in the water on 16 to get up then and find the fairway, knock it on that island
he
green,
did.
and then two putt at
Took
the
his.
last from 60 feet.
He did.
I tell you, he's an easy kid to pull for, and he could be a mega star.
He could be.
He
I
could
mean,
be.
I kept thinking as I'm watching that final twosome at Houston, could be the final twosome Sunday at Augusta. It could be. It wouldn't shock me.
Well, it could be. I mean, yeah, look, it's a pretty darn good golf course for him in that it gives you wiggle room off the tee,
It
and you've
does.
got to scramble, and he's a great scrambler. But the most important thing at Augusta National is your iron play from 150 to 200 yards. You get more of those shots than just about any other golf course. And you have to be so precise with them. And that's not his forte.
Yeah.
So he's gonna have the odd double bogey here or there. And you almost cannot make a double bogey and win the Masters. You almost cannot.
Yeah.
You go
Good
back
point.
25 years, that's, 25 times somebody's won playing 72 holes. That's 1,800 holes they've played. There's only been six doubles made
Oh,
amongst people that have won. That is a
man.
very low percentage, and he makes too many big numbers.
Man, you do know your stuff. So now forget the stats and step back for a second. And I hark back to a quote from a man you know well, Ben Crenshaw, who once told me for a magazine piece I was writing that to him, Augusta National is a mystical cathedral. What is it to you? What does it mean to you to walk those fairways among those towering pines?
I love Crenshaw's quotes, mystical cathedral. That's well said. I'd say it has a Raiders of the Lost Ark mysticism to
Mm,
it. You feel like you're walking around the Louvre, I mean,
mm,
everywhere. If you walk to the Louvre, you stop. You can't believe how beautiful everything is. But then the closer you get to the beauty of it, there's a marvelous story behind whatever painting is, whatever art piece of art you're looking at there. And that's what it is. It's interactive art. It's an interactive museum. But there's so many wonderful things. One is the beauty. It's too good to be true. It's too beautiful to be true.
it is.
Uh, but every single shot has historical context. So it's here that Billy Joe Patton hit it in the water, and Curtis Strange did the same thing
He did.
in 1985. It was here that Chip Beck laid up. Can't believe that. It was here that Gene Saracen towed in a four wood and
Unbelievable.
holed it almost
Yeah,
from the same place, almost from
yeah.
the same yardage, separated by, 5, 6 decades. So every shot has historical context. And this week, when I sit down, one of the things I really don't have to do is explain the golf holes to people.
You
Our
don't.
audience knows them like you know them.
Mm-hmm.
They absolutely, it's the most private of golf courses, but for 1 week, it's the most public course in the
It is.
world.
Well said. Beautiful. So before I let you go, I have to ask one last obligatory question, and it's about LIV Golf, and you have been very outspoken against it, and I have loved all of your stances and appreciated them. So how does this thing play out now? Where are we headed? What do you want to see happen with LIV and the PGA Tour?
I don't think LIV's going anywhere. I think LIV's going to be around for some time. I mean, if you've dove in and read anything about it, MBS, Saudi, they need to diversify their economy, and they look at golf as the vehicle to do it. And pushing that vehicle is LIV, and Yasser, who runs LIV. I played golf with President Trump before he got reelected, and I felt like the whole day he wanted to talk about LIV. And it was a fascinating day. Every time we'd putt out, he'd come over and want to talk to me about LIV. And one of the things he said to me, he was very generous, and he said, "Look, I know we disagree about LIV, but let me just tell you why LIV's going to make it." He said, Yasser, who heads PIF, who funds LIV, said, Yasser loves golf more than you do and more than I do. Now, that's hard to believe,
it is very
but
hard.
that's what he said. He said, and they have, and I'd never heard this number, he said they have $32 trillion worth of oil under that sand, and they have to diversify their economy. And he said, so LIV is not going anywhere. And so if the tour doesn't make alliances with LIV, they will continue to poach indefinitely into the future and always be a threat. So I ended the day and I thought, like, okay, I thought LIV might die because it's such a, from an ROI standpoint, such a failure. But it turns out that they've got very deep pockets and they're not going anywhere. So I just say, look, the idea that Yasser is hung up on the team aspect of golf when there is really no evidence that the world is hungry for team golf, and certainly no evidence that it's hungry for team golf in the far corners of the world, because it doesn't then appear in prime time or any reasonable time scale in the United States, where the biggest market for golf is. But he's hung up on that. So I say, let's compete. If you remember, from 1980 to 1996, there was a little thing called the European Tour, and they had all the best players, all of them. They were all over there. Seve, Nick Faldo, Bernard Langer, Jose Maria Olazabal, Sandy Lyle, Ian Woosnam. They won 10 of the 16 Masters from 1980 to 1996. Was the PGA Tour impoverished, or was there a sense that it was impoverished because the best players, for the most part, were in Europe? No. We just competed. And at the major championships, they all came together. The PGA Tour is very good at running PGA Tour events. And there are cynics and critics out there that raise their eyebrows at the number of dollars that the PGA Tour claims to contribute to charities, because they take credit for each local tournament. But nonetheless, the vehicle for those charity tournaments is the PGA Tour. And it's billions of dollars that go to local charities and national charities via the PGA Tour. So the PGA Tour, for all the criticism, is a vehicle for good. Its foundation is charity, and it runs the best tournaments in the world. So let's just compete. I don't see any reason to align with the Saudis or with LIV. Scotty's not going anywhere. Jordan Spieth's not going anywhere. I say Jordan Spieth, even though his play's fallen off, he's one of the few that still move the needle. Rory's not going in. Rory's not going anywhere. And the players that they took, while they're very good, and we do miss some of them, I do too, they don't tend to move the needle as much as they think they do. They bought, the Saudis did, a moment in time. Form is ephemeral. Players come and go. They bought some hot players that didn't really move the needle. And in time, their games have decayed. So that's where we're at as far as I'm concerned.
I like that. And by the way, speaking of playing with President Trump, I watched the YouTube video of Trump and a LIV player, Bryson DeChambeau, obviously, and I was highly impressed with President Trump's golf game. Did he hit some good shots the day you played with him?
I want to tell you that President Trump smokes it, hits it on the line. So, if you remember Bruce Litsky's golf swing.
I do.
Bruce Litsky took it inside,
Big
over the
fader,
top.
yeah.
Okay, right over the top. It's a great way to hit it solid. That's kind of what President Trump does. He absolutely drives the eyes out of it. He's
Huh.
not the best chipper, he's not the best putter, but he drives the eyes out of it and hits a lot of great iron shots
Hmm.
and loves. I mean, absolutely loves golf.
Just
And
loves it.
I brought a friend of mine along. The president couldn't have been more engaging to everybody in the group. Our wives were there, ask everybody questions. Could speak in great detail about names and shots and golf. And one minute he's showing me his granddaughter's swing, and the next minute he's showing me Sam Snead's swing on his phone. He's like,
Hmm.
what do you think my granddaughter needs to do? And why
Hmm.
can't could she do this or she do this? And anyway, it was a very interesting day. And I say this to people are like, I can't believe you play with President Trump. I'm like, listen.
Hmm.
As the president of the United States, I would play with Biden. I'd play with Barack Obama. I'd play with
I
Bill
got you.
Clinton. Are you
Yep.
kidding me?
Are you
These are
kidding
the
me?
most. Why would we not
Yeah.
take the opportunity to get to know the most fascinating politicians of our time?
Yeah. Which golf course did you play with him?
We played his course down in the Jupiter Palm Beach area,
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
which was beautiful,
Hmm.
absolutely beautiful.
And how did you play?
He and I were partners. I played pretty good. I wouldn't say I played great, but I played pretty good. You play fast, you move along pretty fast.
Huh.
But I certainly hit a lot of good shots.
And by the way, you've had some physical problems, right? Have you bounced back?
I have. Yeah, thank you. Boy, you do your homework.
I
Yeah, I've had
do.
some
Thank you.
tennis elbow here and there. It went away mysteriously. I don't know how. It's the same way it came to me.
That's always the way. Yeah. Okay. So, Brandel, it has been a pleasure. I appreciate you sharing your eloquence and your insight. And I will be watching live from Augusta as we get into the Masters this week. So, appreciate your time.
Oh, gosh. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to join you, Skip. Thank you very much.
Okay. That is it for this Skip One-on-One. We will see you next week.